Coming up in today's video, we're talking about a huge controversial change that WWE has made. Looks like they may have been forced to do it. Also, we got to talk about a huge shift in TNA plans and what this means for their TV deal. And yes, we are going to talk about NXT's strategy for calling up main roster, some discrepancies with the report, but there is something very interesting being said that I think we definitely need to talk about. All right, guys, I want to kick things off first and foremost with NXT. There apparently is a new strategy, according to Dave Meltzer, in how WWE NXT are calling up talent. Now, if you guys read the initial report, I'm not really too concerned about this because the report basically suggested that Vince McMahon would call people up even if they're abruptly in a storyline or whatever it may be. While parts of that is somewhat true, that's not entirely true. There was definitely people who were written off NXT, then called up to the main roster. It wasn't 100% one-size-fits-all solution. So I don't want to dive too much into that part of the strategy that's being talked about in the report. However, there is something that was very interesting about the report that shed some light on WWE's talent acquisition. And this is basically WWE's strategy moving forward when it comes to signing talent to NXT, because the belief is that veteran talent would not be signed to NXT and instead possibly go to the main roster. Now, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the suggestion that is being made is essentially that WWE will hire veteran wrestlers for NXT to help give a little bit of presence on the show, but also having veterans being able to work with some of the younger guys and girls to help them develop, while also being a notable name on the weekly series of NXT. That actually makes a lot of sense. If you guys know, the other day I made a video and I was talking about Go Shiozaki from Pro Wrestling Noah. And I questioned, would NXT really bring him in? Because he's 43 years old. From Pro Wrestling Noah, he's left the company. And obviously we don't have confirmation that he's joining the WWE. But I think so many times in professional wrestling, people talk about age, where like NXT has to be a system where everybody's getting called up to the main roster. And I do think if WWE's strategy is in some ways saying, yes, we are definitely going to use a call-up system, but we are going to sign talent and we are going to put veterans on the show with no intentions of calling them up, dude, I think it makes sense. I think it's a legitimate strategy because you do need to have some of these young people to work with. And then, of course, you know, maybe you catch lightning in a bottle and then you could call them up if you so choose. But that is something that is very interesting. I could very much see WWE doing that moving forward. Wrestling and age doesn't matter as much as people think. And I just want to be clear on that. I think a lot of times people are like, well, WWE, this person is so old, blah, 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 blah. Guys, wrestlers today, they're not taking steroids. They're not doing hard drugs. It's a whole different time period. And that is something that definitely has to be mentioned. I don't think age is that much of a factor anyways, but let it be known. All right, guys, let's talk about it. TNA Impact. Well, TNA made a huge reveal today. They announced its final slate of events for 2025. So what does this mean for the TV deal? Because we are under the assumption that TNA will go live 52 weeks a year. Well, if you look at TNA and their announcement, there's definitely not that many live shows. However, we can confirm that TNA does have a couple live episodes in the plans, and they will go back to doing tape stuff. So what does this mean? I'm going to throw the graphic up on the screen in just a second, but really what's important to know here is that I do believe a TV deal announcement is coming soon. I think the question now becomes, when does it kick in? So this is part of the announcement that we have from TNA. And if you guys take a look at it, TNA Impact Live Thursday, November 13th, TNA Turning Point live Friday, November 14th. And obviously we have Saturday tapings for TNA Impact, which is November 15th. And those are all taking place at Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida. Super excited about that. Then on the right side of the image, we have TNA Final Resolution, which is live Friday, December 5th. TNA Impact Saturday, December 6th, and Sunday, December 7th, which is taking place at the El Paso Coliseum. That is going to be in December, and we obviously don't have live tapings for those shows. So the reason why I'm even bringing this up, it's obviously for a variety of reasons, but I think we need to have that conversation as to what is the plan here. And I think deep down inside, what is really happening here is TNA will announce their TV deal, but it probably won't kick in until 2026. So I think that is something that we definitely got to talk about. Obviously they want to do live content every week. If they're on the CW, if they're on Peacock, if they're on CBS, Paramount, or whatever, I think that's very well going to happen. What's really interesting here, though, is for those who are expecting the TV deal announcement, if we get the TV deal announcement and it does kick in 2025, then we know not much will be changing with their strategy. We know that for a fact. Not much will be changing with their strategy. That's where it gets kind of confusing. So the TNA going live, I think that needs to happen. If you're offering the new TV deal announcement soon and it says, 2026 January CW or A&E or this and that, whatever it may be, it doesn't really matter at this stage. I think it's just important that we acknowledge that it has to happen. Like, I think it has to go live. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses that TNA has. Yes, it's cool that you're going to have a couple live episodes, but we need to be live every single week. And I think if TNA could do that, it's going to be a major win for the company. If they can't do that, then maybe we shouldn't get too excited about the TV deal. But I'm expecting the TV deal at Bound for Glory. And if we're not getting it at Bound for Glory, then I think it's safe to assume that we are ways away from it, which would be very confusing and very odd. That brings us to our final topic, NXT Invasion, which, by the way, guys, if you're not subscribed, make sure you click subscribe. This way you never miss a video on the channel. NXT Invasion is no longer a thing. WWE made the announcement, and a lot of people are wondering as to why they made this change. Why is it now called TNA NXT Showdown? Why is it no longer Invasion? Well, as you guys know, the global political scale today is just very, 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 very chaotic. And the show was originally scheduled for October 7th with the name Invasion. There's been a lot of negative feedback politically and from fans, and it's just led to WWE making the change. Now, of course, with WWE making this change, some people are some people are upset about it. Some people are okay with it. I think deep down, really, the name doesn't matter. I don't think the name really matters. I think it's understandable as to why WWE would make the change. One thing I found that was very interesting was Bully Ray was talking about this and why the Showdown name is better. He actually says it makes more sense for the storyline because the Invasion concept was off from the start. He said I was scratching my head about the whole Invasion name because how do you have an invasion when just a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, however long it's been, these two brands have just been working together. Everything has been going pretty well up until just a couple of weeks ago, which I think is a very fair assessment. I think if you look at it from the Invasion standpoint, it really doesn't make sense to call it an invasion. They've been working in tandem. They've been working and collaborating in tag matches and people working together. It's kind of weird for it to all of a sudden be an invasion. WWE doing brand supremacy between the two makes a lot of sense. And you could kind of see why they made that change. But obviously, when you look at professional wrestling, a lot of things that are happening politically around the world, for some reason, pro wrestling is kind of looked at as like this really real thing. I don't think that's true. I think professional wrestling is no different than any scripted movie or scripted TV show. So I don't know why sometimes things of the real world kind of have an impact on it. But deep down inside, if the feedback is that negative, people are that unhappy, and it's being covered by media, it's usually a time in which WWE, at that point in time, WWE will make that change. So it is what it is, but the Invasion name is no longer, it's now called Showdown. I don't think it really is that big of a deal, but let me know what you guys think down below.